Hi, this is Judy Ann Scheidler, and I'd like to welcome you back to At Home in Bethel Park. Today, our guest is Mr. Tom Hosack, who is the president and CEO of one of our area's largest real estate firms, Northwood Realty Services. Thank you, Tom, for joining us. How are you?
Great. Thank you, Judy. It's my pleasure to be here today. I am a third-generation realtor. My father actually, I'm an SOB, a son of a broker. My father owned a large real estate company, which is actually the largest in the western Pennsylvania area when he sold in the 80s. So I've grown up and been around this business for a long time and really love and enjoy it.
What brokerage was that?
It was Vanguard Realty. They were around the city in the late 70s and early 80s.
Okay. I think I've heard about that. Tell us a little bit about Northwood.
Northwood is a locally owned business. We're headquartered here in the western Pennsylvania area. We have 37 offices in western Pennsylvania and eastern Ohio. We have been in business for 56 years and span all of pretty much western Pennsylvania and go down to the West Virginia line and out to Somerset and up to Somerset and Katanning. We handle both residential and commercial, full service, and good locally owned family business.
We have a saturation at Northwood in the southwestern Pennsylvania area. Then we do Butler, Beaver, Washington, Fayette. Okay.
Yes, we cover
neighborhood offices.
Yeah, we cover 19 counties that we have offices in.
Wow, I didn't know it was that many. Butler, Beaver, Armstrong.
Yes.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, Somerset, Westmoreland, Fayette, Greene. So yeah, we're kind of all over the place.
That's great. That's a great resource for our area. We're going to talk about this market we have here in southwestern Pennsylvania. We got a lot of things going on in it. We have, like every other market, for a number of years. But we've had a lot of advantages that people have failed to realize and have failed to capitalize on. In southwestern Pennsylvania, if you had to tell us what we did wrong, what would it be?
I would say the biggest thing we did wrong was be part of the United States. We really did not experience any of the problems.
Cessation is not an issue.
Yeah.
We cannot do that.
We really weren't involved in the appreciation that a lot of the rest of the country saw. And so we really didn't see the run-up in prices inflationally that a lot of areas did. We also did not experience the unemployment and that a lot of the areas did. So the really only kind of issue that really impacted our market was attitude and constriction of the credit market. As the lenders became more wary of how they were lending, certainly affected buying ability of people here. But all in all, our market has been miraculously untouched compared to the rest of the country, which experienced double-digit significant declines both in units sold and an average sale price of homes.
And I don't think that when we talk to our buyers and sellers in any area of southwestern Pennsylvania, I think that they're very surprised to hear that because they perceive something completely different.
Yes, I certainly think they do. I mean, every time you turn on the news, every time you watch television, they keep talking about how awful it is, all-time, worst real estate, the biggest fall, and I think people think that has to include them. What they don't realize is it really doesn't. And in fact, there were only a couple months in the market area where our multi-list is Western Pennsylvania multi-list, where they actually experienced a decline in the average sale price. And that doesn't mean anybody's actual house went down in value. It was just the average that month of what was sold was less than the previous year. You compare that to places in Florida and California and Texas, which have had 40-45% reductions in their average sale price. I mean, it's pretty miraculous that we've been that untouched.
My sister has a home in Albuquerque, and normally Albuquerque's market paralleled ours, but no, theirs fell and ours didn't. And when they had to move, she's renting it. She can't sell it. She's upside down. So I think that even other areas, Indianapolis, which is often compared to Pittsburgh, Albuquerque, parts in the South, I think that they have a completely different market outlook than we do. Why do you think that is?
Again, I think that the bad news was in those good markets, we never quite got as good as they were. They did see significantly more appreciation than we did. Western Pennsylvania is somewhat unique in that we have a much longer period of time the average homeowner lives in their house. It's over 7 years. A lot of parts of the country, it's down into 1 to 2 year range. So because people live in their house so long, they really didn't have that underwater buying a home with no money down. Also, Western Pennsylvania is a more conservative area. Certainly there was a lot of people buying FHA loans 3% down or no percent down, but a lot of people were still putting money down on their house, and so it was a lot easier. The other thing was people didn't get themselves in troubles with home equity loans here nearly as bad because there also wasn't
that's
depreciation.
true. I hadn't thought of that. Yeah, but I know very few people who had second mortgages on their home. Do you think it's because of how we were raised?
Well, I'd like to think that, but I think part of it's we didn't have the equity.
Oh, okay.
Because our homes didn't increase in value as much. But what the kind of underlying fact is everybody thinks it was all of the zero down, no doc loans that really caused this problem. But the vast majority of the people who are underwater because of second or third home equity loans, and really had nothing to do with their purchase of their house.
And I guess if a bank issues 2 or 3 loans on a property and it's 2 or 3 times over the value, when a bank needs to pull in some of its assets, they're not there.
Yes. Well, and on top of that, with this whole situation in the banking industry, the government was really pressuring them to make sure they were accurately recording what their assets were. And so it was better for them to have a known loss than to have an unknown loss. So it caused them to push a lot of people. It actually kind of worked positively for people here in Western Pennsylvania because for the people that were underwater in their homes, when the market was good, when you called a lender for a short sale or something like that, they didn't even have the apartments back then. They'd laugh at you because they couldn't understand how anybody in the country could possibly owe more on their house than what it was worth, because everywhere else in the country the home prices were going up so rapidly. Now that the rest of all the lenders have short sale departments, now when you call, normally ours are so small compared to what they're used to dealing with, we can get a lot of them through. So it's interesting because at the height of the market about 5 years ago, Metro Pittsburgh was only second to Metro Detroit in foreclosure rate. And
oh, really?
Yes. And actually, and it was interesting because most parts of the country didn't even have any significant statistical
How long
foreclosure
ago was
rate.
that?
It was about 5 years ago at the height of the market. And now what you see is we're probably one of the only parts of the country where the number of foreclosures has actually declined. Because now that we have short sales and lenders working with people and recasting loans, those people that are just maybe $5,000 or $10,000 underwater are able to fix it rather than just lose their home like they were 4 or 5 years ago.
Now, you said 5 years ago we had a large rate of the foreclosures. Do you think it's because of the loss of industry in our area or the shift in how we were doing business?
It really was kind of, it came down to the types of loan products certain people were using. If people used a no money down or a 3% down and they lived in their home for less than a year or two, when it came time to sell their home, they were underwater. Yeah. I mean, not dramatically underwater, but they were underwater. And it created a lot of issues that way. So it wasn't that it was really kind of an adverse thing economically. It was really just a matter of the lack of appreciation that we were seeing in Western Pennsylvania compared to other parts of the country, which in the long term obviously worked for us because now we're seeing the benefit of that. It was kind of frustrating back then.
Yeah. Well, the Pittsburgh, though, I think is a really unique blend of old and new. Mm-hmm. We have older construction, we have newer construction. I don't think we have a lot. I mean, personally, I don't think we have a lot of rental compared to home. Mm-hmm. I mean, that's just been my observation. Do we have problems with that, or is that? I mean, it seems like so many of the newer regions have beautiful new homes. They're offering them at the $300,000-$400,000 price range. I think our average price is $130,000, somewhere in that area. Does this hurt us when we're attracting business? Does it help? Does it make us more livable?
It certainly helps us more livable as far as purchasing homes. But you pointed out the rental market, and we do have a tremendous lack of rental units in this market. And that has been really aggravated by some of the large industries that are moving into the area. Marcellus Shale, Westinghouse up north, MedRed. A lot of these places are hiring people to bring them in for a year or two to train them to send them out to other locations. So they obviously want to rent.
Right.
And there's such a lack of rental properties that it's really creating a problem. The other thing is that a lot of these people that are losing these houses, unfortunately, still need a place to live.
Right.
And it's not that they make nothing, and it's not they can't afford anything, it's just they couldn't afford what they were paying, and so they need to find rentals. And so it has made it very, very difficult to find a rental market. And there's more and more apartment-type rentals being constructed to take that demand, but there's a lot of people who still want to live in a home.
Yeah, the trend was to turn all the apartments into condominiums and cooperatives. So now here we are. Do you think we'll learn a lesson from this? Because I think that we underestimated the need to have rentals.
Yes, I mean, I think at one point, I mean, I think the market always will follow the demand.
Okay.
Unfortunately, there's a gap oftentimes both in the startup and in the when it starts to fall down. But Western Pennsylvania was an area where home ownership was very highly valued. People had an expectation in their lives that that's what they wanted to do, was to buy a home and own a home. And so there was a lot of demand for home ownership. And with rates being low and rents being high, people saw a great advantage to that, especially when you have to put any money down or anything else. So now as that shifts, I mean, what we are seeing more and more is a lot of these foreclosures and short sales are being bought by investors who are then putting the homes into rental market. And so unfortunately what you're going to really see in the future is somewhat of a redistribution of wealth, because those people who would have been building equity in their own homes are now building equity for somebody that has more money than them. And so, in the long term, this will exacerbate this death of the middle class in our country.
It's a circle. It's like chasing your own tail and not getting past that point. I've talked to some people who have lost their homes and want to buy another home, but there's a waiting period after you go through foreclosure. I think it's 3 years before a bank will even look at you.
And a lot depends. I mean, it's not as simple as it used to be.
Yeah.
A lot depends on credit score. A lot depends on the history. And a lot of times, actually, walking away from the house is worse than actually losing it in foreclosure. There's a lot of different rules. So it's very difficult for those people. And it's also very emotionally difficult for them, because it's hard, when you lost your house to want to jump right back in and do that again. But I think the reality is, for the average American, being that we're so good at saving money, is that having that home and paying that debt down over time is one of the great forced savings accounts that an American family has. And as long as they don't keep taking out home equity loans, it is a really great thing for someone in their financial planning and for their livelihood.
Yeah. Do you think that, I'm going to go off topic for just a second because you made me think of something. Do you think that the reassessment is going to affect many people?
Well, my crystal ball is broken.
Okay.
I can't imagine that it's not going to affect people. I really still think the most significant issue is going to be what happens to the rest of the county surrounding Allegheny County, whether they get forced into reassessment. The unfortunate part about the assessing in Western Pennsylvania, southwestern Pennsylvania, Allegheny County particularly, is that our real estate is so unique. And as you mentioned, new homes and existing homes, oftentimes in certain areas, they're built in the same street.
Yeah.
A lot of neighborhoods like the Mexican War Streets, you can have a $500,000 home next to a $100,000 home. And the problem is if the assessors aren't allowed in the homes and they can't really see what's been done to them and they just do it based on square footage and location, you're obviously going to have enormous discrepancies and disparities. And some of these people that are complaining that they're getting hammered but in fact, when you hear what they were assessed at for a long time, you realize that they had it good for a lot of time. So I think that the appeal process, although it's cumbersome and difficult, it is the best they can do. And without having the real information of what's going on in your home, it's hard for them to detail that. And as an aside, our new website, which will be launching tomorrow, allows homeowners to go on and sign up for what's called My Northwood. Once they do that, they can actually get the sold comps for their neighborhood in case they need those for their appeals. They'll be able to get those along with the photos of the houses and everything else.
Really?
Yes. We thought that was relatively good timing with everything going on.
That's at northwood.com?
Yes, www.northwood.com. In the upper right-hand side, there's a thing, click on there for mynorthwood.com.
So if I go to my street, and I'm John Q. Public, and I just go to my street and click on it, I can put in my street and it'll tell me anything that has sold and what it's sold for.
Yes, you can actually do it in geography to radius of your house.
So kind of like the Modi list where you could draw the circle, or?
Yes, correct, exactly.
Oh.
So it will allow homeowners
nice.
to really be able to do that, and then actually, print pictures of the house and descriptions of the house to show that maybe a house had a finished basement when theirs doesn't, to show it had an extra bathroom that no one ever picked up on. Those things happen. And so it'll allow the public to get a lot more information without having to go through the normal channels.
That's very nice, because as realtors, that's the information we give to our buyers to help them put in a reasonable offer on a house, and the information we give to sellers to help them realize what the value is of their house. So making it available, that's an easy. That's nice. I like that.
Yeah, ours is the only website that will have this information available in the market, and real estate industry has normally been very closed about their information, and we're making it public. It's interesting, every time I talk to somebody who's bought or sold a house, I always kind of talk to them about what their experience was like. And one of the most common things, especially sellers tell me, is when they got a competitive market analysis from their agent, why did they pick those 3 or 4 homes? And was it a conspiracy that they picked the ones to meet the price that they wanted? Were they accurate? What were they? And so for people who are really interested in that, want to verify it, they now have the opportunity to go see all of them and start to understand why maybe that agent picked those 3 or 4 homes. And so it gives them more confidence that the price the agent quoted them is really accurate. Because the other thing that happens is what I like to call the rounding error.
Yeah.
When somebody sells their house on your street and you ask them how much they got, like 169,000 is just about 200.
Oh,
and
okay.
So you start to get this expectation that your house is worth over 200, and really it's probably worth 175. So that way you can really verify what actually things sold for.
Yeah, and I think it's important to note that I believe is public information, but you'd have to go digging for it through the county sites to find sold information as far as what a property transfer.
And yes,
this is not private information.
No, it's not private information. I mean, there is you do have to sign up for it, and you do have to certify you're not going to reuse it.
But it's really an easier.
Yeah. It's a lot easier. The other thing is there are places like Zillow and Trulia and the county website that have information, but they don't always have the information as to the details of the house, how new things were, what was remodeled, the photos of the interior. This has it all kind of linked together, so it really gives you a good idea.
That's really good, because I was checking out my house, and I live in Bethel Park, and I've lived in Bethel Park for 30 years, and my house is paid for, and I've already come to terms with the fact that it's not going to be my retirement fund. But I have also come to terms with the fact that I'm going to be reappraised, and I'm not looking to sell, and I'm not looking to buy, so I'm not in an awkward position. I just wonder how it's going to affect first-time home buyers.
Well, it certainly affects them. Actually, I personally think that with a lot of the first-time home buyers, they're coming into the years of having a family and sending kids to school and doing all those things. So there's some economic value to them. I think the real hardship is on our seniors, who really aren't using a lot of the services the counties offer, and they're having to bear a brunt of it. And I know there's some reductions that they can get by the Homestead Act and everything else, but it's really still a lot less significant. And people that have lived in a home for 30 years. And especially people that have lived in that house for that long and are elderly and only have a few more years really to live alone, to force them to move because they can't afford property taxes is difficult. But having said that, we live in a world that that they have to make budgets balance and bonds and everything else. So it's I'm glad I'm not a politician or a judge that has to decide it, but it's easy to criticize. It is a reality worth, but that's why I really think I hope that typically in the reassessment process, the people in there really do understand the real estate market and will fix all of the really inequities that they see.
Yeah. Now, our first-time home buyers of a few years back, they got a bit of a bonus to buy a house.
Yes. And
they had to stay in their house for 2 years or 3?
I believe it was 3 years.
3 years. We're about at the end of that 3-year period. So we have some homeowners that bought at a low point in the market. So they will have some equity, and a lot of them got seller assist and didn't have to put out money on the closing costs and special bond money. I think a lot of them, now that they realize the market's stable, may be looking to move up in a different priced home, a little bit nicer home, a little nicer area, what they perceive to be a nicer area. But we seem to have a dearth of homes in that market. What's going on?
Well, again, my crystal ball's broken, but I will say there's been this misnomer that the real estate market in Western Pennsylvania, again, is like the national. And the people that seem to be most affected are that middle class people that have been in the home for a while and are ready to move up to a higher end home. And they're very worried about moving at this point and what's going to happen to their home. Are they going to be able to sell their home? And so that fear has kind of driven them. And they're not as pushed because they're not like the first-time home buyers who are having families and the house doesn't fit or really want to move up. And so because of that, we see there's a huge shortage in listings in those price ranges where the first-time home buyers are moving up. And if those people aren't willing to put their houses in the market, then it kind of traps the whole cycle, because those are the homes those first-time home buyers are going to move to, and those are the people that are going to move to those higher-end homes and start to help that side of the market. So it's one of the things that we really see for people in that market. We're seeing multiple offers on quality homes, again, that we haven't seen for quite a few years. And those people really have a great advantage now, because they can sell their house and get a really good value, and then they can turn around at that higher end where there is kind of a little bit of a glut in the market, and they can kind of get a little bit better deal. So there's not oftentimes in any real estate market where you can sell high and buy low. But those people really do have that advantage. It's just a matter of getting that message out. Most of the time, real estate agents say it. They think we're just saying it because we want to sell houses.
Right.
But in reality, it's absolutely true. If you look at the statistics for the last 2 years, the number of homes sold has exceeded the number of new listings. And so we are at one of the lowest numbers in listings we've been in many, many years. And if you look at that and really analyze it by price range, take out the high end and take out the lower end with the foreclosures, and what you end up with is there's a real dramatic shortage.
And that range again would be what price range?
Well, it's always different depending upon market.
Okay.
In the geography we cover, it can be anywhere from 100,000 to 350,000. A lot of it depends on the average price range, but it's kind of simply defined. It's the people that have been in that home, probably their second home, and they've been in it for about 8 to 10 years, are probably the ones who are best suited to really see this benefit to them.
I could see in a lot of neighborhoods here in the South Hills that would fit that, in Upper St. Clair, Bethel Park, Jefferson Hills.
Yeah, absolutely.
Peters Township, yeah, there's a lot of those people that in other markets we would have seen step up. What about our relo people coming in, relocation people? Are they finding the housing that they need?
Yes. They are typically a little bit, because of the affordability of housing in Western Pennsylvania, they have a little less problem in affordability.
Okay.
And also with the relocation companies really aren't moving employees at the lower price ranges. So what we're seeing are really the engineers that are coming to Westinghouse. We're seeing the engineers and drillers that are coming from Marcellus Shale, and these people are all making significant incomes. And so I think that the relo people are very pleasantly surprised when they come here with what they can get for the dollars that they typically have.
Okay, and they might have a little bit more to get than other buyers. They get some bonuses typically from their companies?
Yes, it's not quite as good as it was, but they get a lot of help with closing costs, moving expenses, everything else. A lot depends on the company, but they do have some advantages. But then again, it's a lot more expensive for them, because I don't know if you ever hired a mover to move cross country. It's quite expensive.
I avoided it. We moved my sister and her husband ourselves, and I think it's worth the money
Yes.
to buy a mover, quite frankly,
yes.
after that experience. Home sellers are now more educated about what they have. They don't have a growing bank account in their home. They have an equity asset more than a savings account. Do you think that message has gotten out, that they really look at their home more as a business? Because when you live in your house, it's your home. But when it's anything else, it's business. Do you think they've gotten that message?
Somewhat. I mean, it's always ironic, because everybody realizes everybody else's price went down in their neighborhood but theirs. They normally kind of resist that fact. The other thing that people fail to realize is that there's an expectation when you sell your home that it's in good operating and working condition. Yeah. And so if people in this economy that have deferred maintenance, not replaced the roof that was leaking and just patched it, that didn't modernize some things, are not going to be able to sell their home for the same value that someone that has kept up with that has. And so I think that's where some people really miss out and think that, well, my house is comparable to their house and they got X amount of dollars and I should be able to get the same. It really matters. Condition does really matter, because with home inspections today, people don't expect the house to be perfect, but they expect it to be working the day they walk in.
Yeah, we know. I'm a part owner in a home inspection company, and we see that daily, day in and day out. We get calls from sellers saying, "Why did you say this about my home?" "Well, I'm sorry, your roof's bad. Yeah. I can't help it if your roof is bad." "Well, I just had it put on 25 years ago." "Okay, it's a 20-year roof."
Right.
In 25 years, you needed to replace that roof. I feel bad for these sellers, and a lot of these sellers, I'm going to tell you right now, are people who are in that older group that are looking to downsize and have thought of their home as their bank account. And they're putting out money that they had counted on for retirement. You feel bad, but you worry that, are we going to be educating people as realtors in the correct way in the future so we don't see this pain?
Well, and I think a lot of it is that the people in Western Pennsylvania, being more conservative, also invested a lot less money, especially that greatest generation in their home. Mm-hmm. And I'm sure you've seen it. You walk in and it's the boomerang Formica with the seamless kitchen sink, and it's very dated. You combine that with that the younger generations today typically aren't the do-it-yourself kind of people. There's a little bit of a upswing in it based on all the cable channels. But people aren't necessarily able to work on their home like they used to. And so when they walk in and they see a really dated house, they don't see it as a cool project that they can undertake. They see it as run and get something that's already done. So it does make it difficult when you get those homes that are in that level of condition. Yeah.
And I think if the realtor is doing their job right, they have a frank talk with the homeowners about what they are able to do to get it ready for the market in conjunction with what their budget may be, because sometimes just painting and doing some easy things, even replacing carpet, that's not that expensive. It really isn't, and what you gain in value when you sell your house is greater, because you have to price your house to what the market will bear. And as you said, if they are looking for something more updated and less of a project, move-in ready, that's a big deal.
I actually had my house on the market at one point, and I had an agent from Northwood come and look at my house, and he said, you need to repaint your daughter's bedrooms white. And I said, well, one's pink, one's lime malicious. I mean, what could be wrong with that? I mean, the new people might have daughters, maybe they want it. And he pointed out to me, because again, even though I know real estate when it's your own house, it's amazing how it changes. He pointed out to me, he said, people have to be able to envision their family in those rooms. And if it's perfect, then that's great. But if not, then you really need to make it as neutral as possible. And that's another thing, is staging, decluttering. These are all things that a good real estate agent can help a seller with, that can make their home much, much more saleable. Yeah,
I think that a lot of real estate agents have been afraid to approach the staging aspect just because our market has fallen and they don't want to add additional expenses onto the sellers. And I think it's a mistake. Mm-hmm. Because I think that staging the house is very critical. People have to be able to envision themselves living in that home. They have to become emotionally bonded to the home, and I think sellers need to be aware of these things.
Yeah, absolutely. The statistics bear that homes that are staged sell dramatically faster than other homes, and I think that it's a great investment. And I think the good news is, because of the economy, most people aren't doing it. And so the people that do get the staging done, their home is going to show so much more spectacularly than the homes that didn't. Right. And this is such an emotional moment when those people walk in, and they'll rationalize what they've picked emotionally. And if they can't vision themselves in that house and don't see the value of that house, then they're really not going to want to make an offer and buy it.
What would you say in this last minute or so to the people in southwestern Pennsylvania about the market?
Well, I would say that don't believe what you hear. It is a good time to buy or sell a home. Interest rates are near historic lows. And I think we have not seen a deflation. I think the economy is trending up. I think it's a positive. There's a lot of things going. It's an election year. I think Europe's working out their debt situation somehow. And I don't think it's going to get dramatically better, but I think it's going to continue to increase. And I think it's a great time for people to get in there. And I really think it's a great time for those families who have been thinking about moving for a while but thought it wasn't a good time, really need to get into the act, because I think it'll help our overall area. And I think I still believe home ownership is a good investment for an American family. And I think this is a great time to get in. And I always say, buy low, sell high.
Buy low, sell high. And that's definitely a good way to go. And Tom Hosack from Northwood Realty Services, President and CEO, I'd like to thank you for joining us today. And this is Judy Ann Scheidler from At Home in Bethel Park, and we will see you next time. Thank you.